So first question, it is obvious to all that government has a spending problem and they have overtaxed and piled on fees to an unlivable extent. What is your plan?
Wow. So first off, you're right. My plan is multifaceted, but it could be reduced to focusing on what the auditor for the government has already stated, which is we need to focus on a proactive government. So we have a $13 billion backlog of infrastructure. And anyone who says that it's a spending problem, it's not a revenue problem, isn't recognizing the fact that the infrastructure is still falling apart. Like, it's always a revenue problem if we're not creating a city that can like perpetuate into the future sustainably. So I do want to increase revenues, but I also need to decrease. We have the largest middle manager class in any city government by a long shot. Like, I want people filling potholes. I don't want people managing filling potholes. So also those people aren't really, those positions aren't voted on. The city just creates them. So there's not oversight, and there's not really accountability. We just see this ballooning of the pension and the salaries that the city incurs, and we don't get anything for it. Like, pay more pothole fillers. I don't need more middle managers. That's it.
Will you support Prop 13 taxpayer protections?
So personally, yes. I feel like I can be objective in a lot of things, but Prop 13 has been important for my family being able to stay in the community. We probably would have been priced out. So my parents purchased the home, or I don't know how that works, but that we're on an older property tax, and we are, among the lower income, probably the lowest income on our street. And it's allowed my community, or my family, to stay in the community. We're fourth generation San Diegans. And I think that ideally I like policies that allow people to stay where they can. I know that there's revenue issues, and I also think that there's problems with people who are really wealthy paying really low property taxes. Like, I'm not saying that there's an imbalance, but just carte blanche repeal, no. I think there's nuances to finding money that doesn't pull people who have been in a community for generations out.
Mm-hmm. Would you move public employees to a 401k and eliminate public pensions? If not, how would you address the city employee pension deficit?
Yeah, so I like that idea. A lot of the issue with the pension is a pension is like a set amount, and so we invest this fund, and on a down year or an up year, we could pay out, the pension is set for 6.5% gains. So as long as they're gaining 6.5% on the market every year, they should be covering their pension expenses. But they have a bad year, things go really bad. But with pension, you can't adjust it. So that just becomes a deficit. With 401ks, it's basically your payment gets balanced to the market because you're in the market. I think that is a much more efficient way to deal with the pension system in the future. But the reality is like a lot of these pensions are set fees that are unavoidable for the city to pay currently.
Will you reduce city staffing, especially senior managers? That's the question. Sorry.
Yes. I think there's been a vast increase in middle managers, and like, I don't know what consultant gave the city this idea, but it's tangibly not increasing like the ability for the city to provide services and operate efficiency. It's currently a noose around our neck. So, I mean, look at performance. Like, these people have jobs. I'm not saying like, I'm like chomping at the bit to get you all fired. I hate all you, like they would probably invest in the community, but I want to see those funds allocated towards people that are actually offering the city's services and filling potholes and repairing power lines. That's what it is to live in the city. It's not the person who's organizing them. They've been organized just fine in most cities with way lower manager populations, and Why do we have these ballooning fees? I've seen no benefit. So yes, flat answer, yes.
Would you support changing the way city residents have been asked to pay for trash pickups, such as changing it to a private trash company rather than a city-run business on our property taxes bill?
Yeah, so I would be interested in that. So, but the fees I'm mostly against every fee that the city has incurred for residents recently, but the trash fee, while, oh my God, we can get, I don't want to lose on implementation, but the reality is we were one of the only cities, I think we were the only large city that offered free trash services. And so that's an important place to build city revenue. But it's like charging fees you can only earn that by like offering services and benefits. So like if we're charging fees, then we need to have that money directly allocated towards filling potholes or something. So there's no, oh, that goes into the mess and that goes and pays the middle managers. I don't know if that answered the question. I kind of got lost in my rant.
I think, well, because they said, it sounds like you'd support changing the way they've been asked to pay for trash pickup. Would you support changing it to a private trash company rather than?
I'm a fan of competition. So if the city can do it in a way where they compete with the city service with a public service, and then there's competitions, there's a market. I don't want it to create a singular market where we create a contract with a singular trash pickup company and then we're locked in. I like markets where they create benefits to us as taxpayers, but also the government operates in places where markets don't work very well. Because sometimes, if the market is like healthcare in America, if the market it's going to go as high as you can. A government is designed to try and offer services for the least amount possible. But sometimes for something like trash pickup, I think creating a market by allowing entry for private companies, but not giving them long-term contracts that puts the city and ties our hands up.
Where do you stand on sanctuary cities?
So first off, I'm terribly against a lot of the ICE interventions and everything. I support our status as a sanctuary city. I think there's some questions about how we were, giving hotel rooms to asylum seekers and then putting Americans in tents. I definitely have qualms about where our priorities lie, but I would keep our status as a sanctuary city. I think immigrants are very important to America.
If you had to drop out of the race and had to select another candidate to support, who would it be?
So that's pretty easy for me, and that's Mandy. I've been around a lot of them, and I can tell you, I care about San Diego. That's why I'm here, and Mandy cares about San Diego, and that's why she's here. If you have a difference of opinion, it's not going to be due to a corporate interest or something. It's going to be a disagreement between two earnest people who care about how to make the city better. And so, honestly, I'm doing this. I would hate to be a spoiler candidate for her. I really, if I wasn't running, that's kind of what I want to see in local leadership for sure.
What is your view on affordable housing that's not really affordable and ADUs everywhere without infrastructure planning? Yeah,
so that's kind of a couple questions.
Yeah.
Affordable housing, I support a ban on short-term rentals of 30 days or more. Implementation, I can say ban. I'm also for something that vastly restricts the
short-term rentals that are 30 days or more, or 30 days or less.
Sorry, 30 days or less.
Okay,
yes.
That's what I thought. I was I just want to clarify before if I publish that. I'm wait.
Sometimes they say more than 30 days is okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted.
I support that. I'm also just one vote on a city council. So beyond that, I would vote in anything that, in my mind, makes housing more affordable. I think when the government puts hands on too heavily, things don't work out. So rent controls, it's oh, it's a nice idea, but it destroys the market and people aren't free to redevelop and make places more nice and profitable. But we do have a specific problem in Point Loma and OB, which is my district specifically. We've got like 6% of houses being short-term rentals. And I know there's people, I'm one of those people. I know people want to live in those houses. Like, so where the market is not doing a good job, the housing market's screwed up. The housing is a financial market, it's an investment market. It's not a market of people trading houses towards their needs. I want to reapproach that as best as possible. I have no interest in increasing the cost of housing in San Diego. It's unaffordable. It's rising at a rate that there's no way for someone who's an average person in the city to keep up with the expenses of houses as time goes on. And I'll tell you, I'm 28. I've got a few friends that own homes in the city. Not one of them was able to purchase that home by themselves. Every single one of them came in with a substantial amount of financial support from their parents. And I think that's great. Like I want people to be supported by their parents, but I think a situation where you create a city that you can only live in if you've got inheritance to support you isn't a free city, isn't an equitable city. So there's a million things that cause increases in housing, but for the short-term rentals, I would do that. What was the rest of the question? Like so multi-part.
It was about ADUs being everywhere without infrastructure.
Yeah, ADUs are everywhere, and there's no infrastructure for them. Yeah, so I support restrictions. I like property freedom with your own house. Oh, my brain's going blank.
That's okay.
But property rights.
Yeah.
Like I think you should be able to build an ADU on your own property with like as minimal oversight from the government as possible. But when you are creating a favela of ADUs and you're creating like 18 units on a street that has no increase in parking, it doesn't make sense. So first off, I'm generally against like more than one ADU for like a residential neighborhood. But even when you're going to go to increase the amounts, the density, there needs to be like requirements from the government for standards for first off city parking, infrastructure. Is there power line? Like we're increasing electrical density vastly and kind of with no oversight. So this, I'm an energy guy. These things are problematic. This is what you get in like the Rio de Janeiro favelas where they can pull electrical lines and no one pays. This is problematic. So yes, affordable housing, but against just this haphazard, throw 10 ADUs in the back of like some empty lot. And there's like a cul-de-sac with 2 parking spots that now 20 people are supposed to live in. It doesn't make sense.
So what will you do to support transparent community input with real influence and not just symbolic hearings?
Well, personally, I would say like, I feel like a community member, so I would feel very accountable to my constituents on a personal level. But as far as policy or practice, I don't know I don't have an answer for that like is structural or policy based. I can say like earnestly I'd be trying to increase my connection with my community members, and we've got a bunch of, the Peninsula Planning Board, Clairemont Town Council. We've got a bunch of like organized groups that are community members. So I would do my best to diversify the information to those I am a San Diego, I'm an expert in San Diego, but I'm really an expert on Point Loma. When I go to Clairemont, I need to talk to someone who's lived there for 15 years and knows how to manage that place the best. Because I have ideas, but I'm not living it as intimately as someone. I drive the streets sometimes, but I'm not waking up every morning there and dealing with that. I was running into that issue during the forum when they asked about the parking, or sorry, the biking lanes, because I support biking lanes, but then I also was hearing from everyone that the way it was implemented, they weren't warned, that no one talked to them. And so it's like, how do I give an answer where it's like, I support biking lanes, but the way things are happening is just not proper. And there's no communication. You paved a bunch of biking lanes and no one in the community was informed. That's the problem.
Will you scale back or cancel Pure Water Phase 2?
Yeah, so I kind of have a lot of issues with Pure Water. But we talk about 30% rate hike for water. That's because of Pure Water. So the city's like, we've got such a problem with water. You're going to pay extra on your water. And also the way we're going to get clean water is we're going to clean wastewater, which is really energy intensive. And the city is completely reliant, pretty much. I know we got community power on fossil fuels for our electrical energy. So it's just like, I like the idea of clean water, but you're going to put a lot of pressure on other parts of the system. Already currently, you're charging people a 30% increase for water. That is an insane increase. That's as much as gas prices have increased from Iran. Like that is huge. Mm-hmm. So it's inadequate, but I am very interested in seeking pathways out of our water crisis. I think that's a Band-Aid. I think that's like, you get some consultants to come in and sell you like, hey man, we'll just take your wastewater. You put the site right over here on next to the airport. We'll make it a homeless encampment, and then we'll turn it into a wastewater facility. And trust me, it'll all work out. And I don't buy it. I think expenses are going to be multiplied over what they're saying it's going to be, and I don't think it's going to be nearly as efficient at you want to know how to create wastewater or like help water for San Diego. It's not a city level thing, but you go to the state, you create new nuclear power plants, which we haven't done for decades, and you desalinate. Problem solved. But we're all going to like red tape and like try and fix little things. No one is long-term thinking, okay, we are running into an energy crisis. Our infrastructure is built off coal and gas. But then we've got different political parties who are like, all right, we're going to like super fund renewables and solar panels. And then 4 years later, okay, that funding's zero. So the market's all wonked up. It doesn't make any sense. Long-term thinking as much as I can for wastewater or just for water in the city would be to pull back on the Pure Water and at least heavily audit. And like, I don't want an optimistic take on how much this is going to cost the city. I want the most pessimistic take, and then I can think about if it's worth it.
Campaigns require money, and large donors want some type of quid pro quo. How will you handle this? It's probably the issue with the biggest impact on how the city is currently run. They mentioned developers, unions, and special interests.
I wouldn't disagree with that. So my answer is I don't have a lot of people funding me. I feel accountable to regular, just average citizens, my neighbors. There's no amount of money that could change my focus. If I were ever lucky enough to win, the salary would be like double whatever I've made previously in my life. Like I would feel like I'm rolling in it, and I would be working 80 hours a week. If it's double what I used to make, I'll do double the time.
Why are we still subsidizing the San Diego Zoo with our property taxes? Would you support removing that tax, as the zoo is very profitable and no longer needs support?
I can't say I'm super informed on that issue, but intuitively, I think it's necessary to keep the San Diego Zoo as operational as possible. It's very lucrative for the city. It draws a lot of tourism here. But I'm always running into new issues. That one I don't know about, but if it was a lease that is no longer necessary and we can start charging them for it, and then I think that might be a way to increase revenue for the city, but I wouldn't want to be draining it. I think running the zoo as operationally like efficient as possible is the most important to make it, you know, the best zoo on the planet. So people come to San Diego to go to see it.
People are realizing green policies have increased the cost of living considerably. Now that people like Gates admit we're not facing an existential crisis and new reports prove the models were wrong, will you support rolling back green spending?
So green spending sometimes increases costs and sometimes decreases costs. The reality is it increases costs when you just go carte blanche. You're just like green, everything green. But renewables, solar panels are efficient. Do I support like creating this giant solar farm out there? No. But local solar on your house, really, really beneficial, really drops the burden of this energy burden on SDG&E. We don't have the infrastructure to support our increases in energy consumption. So things that can drop that consumption, that pressure on the grid are helpful. But I'm pro, you know, I think that the earth should be considered with every decision you make. And so, for example, China, they were like, all right, solar panels are really great, but we're just gonna like burn a bunch of oil making solar panels for 10 years. And then we're gonna have a bunch of solar panels. And then when we go into the AI race against America, we've got solar panels and nuclear power plants. I'm for green where green is indicative of long-term thinking and prioritizing sustainability. I'm not for green insofar as like, look at me, I'm doing what's good for the environment, or like pure water. Like, oh yeah, we're cleaning water. We're relieving pressure on the water system and save water. Okay, where's the energy coming from? Do that.
What are your thoughts on how we as a community can address the homeless population?
So multifaceted. One thing is there's a state mandated thing where a lot of the funds for housing that come to the city for homeless are housing first. So literally to get the state's funds for these developments, you basically can't require health services. You can't require testing. They can be still using drugs actively. That's problematic. Then we've got the city, which allocates all its funds to a bunch of nonprofits that don't have oversight. So number one is audit the hell out of our homelessness programs. And this is because I want to serve the maximum amount of homeless people. Like, they're not being served. I'm not trying to villainize them. The reality is we are spending a lot of money. A lot of money is going towards nonprofits that have no accountability. And then we're stuck here as the taxpayer being like, I'm spending a bunch of money on homelessness. There's $100 million a year on homelessness. What's the homeless problem? Well, the reality is there's no oversight. There's almost zero, like, okay, how much per dollar do we get people in houses? That doesn't happen. I would make that happen. I would do everything. The auditor for the city is interested in that happening. If I vocalized that on the city council, I think I would at least make it, uncomfortable to vote no against for other people.
What are your thoughts and plans regarding the proliferation of bike lanes?
So we run into two issues. I like bikes. Bikes are great, but when we haphazardly try and add bike lanes to infrastructure that's built for cars, things that are weird happen. Well, for one, this isn't really in San Diego. This is like in Encinitas, but they added these bike lanes near the coast. And before those lanes existed, someone was fine, or there weren't any crashes. They added these bike lanes and then someone got hit. And so sometimes bike lanes force people to drive directly next to cars. I think there's a lot of nuances to how bike lanes affect like a specific street. I watch a lot of infrastructure videos about how bike lanes and like how a thinner street is actually a safer street because it makes people drive slower, stuff like that. I am for increasing bike lanes, but the reality is there's no good way to do it when your infrastructure is all built for cars. I support things like building literally separate bikeways. Those are great. Expand those as much as possible. Those exist a bit on the coast, on the beach areas, but once you get into anywhere residential, they're not super accessible. So I think creating kind of a grid of these more accessible, separate from any highway bike lanes, and then you can use those city bike lanes to get towards those and then actually navigate the larger city would be the best way to implement it. But the reality is you're running into a bunch of red tape. I would support bike lanes as much as possible, though I would also support that they need to tell people when they're installing them. That's probably number one. If you're going to do it, you should at least inform people. That's the worst way it could be done.
Do you support keeping the 30-foot height limit along the coast, especially in the area that was affected by 2020 Measure C?
The Midway development. I've got a lot of questions about the Midway development. One, I've lived here. That area does need to be redeveloped. It's a giant parking lot and great real estate. It could be done. You could do a lot with it. But the reality is it was given to a Todd Gloria hyper donor, and there isn't much oversight. There's a lot of questions that the community has about infrastructure. So like, okay, we're adding so many units. Like, how are these already trafficked streets going to handle that increase in population? I don't think it should be. Sometimes the 30-foot height limit is annoying red tape, but also it's really important for preserving these beach communities. I don't think I support it in that circumstance. I think they're going too big. They're going for a little too dense in an area that doesn't have the requisite infrastructure to support it. And also, it's done in a way where there's a lot of opacity. Like, I want to see an open bid for the government contract. I want to see competition, because it's going to be expensive.
Will you prioritize critical public safety, fire, brush clearing, police, and infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, storm drains spending in the budget?
Yeah, so I'm about city services. I want to be as preventative as possible. It's way more expensive to fix a destroyed road than to fix the pothole before it spreads and breaks everything apart. Like with brush, it's about removing brush before you have to deal with a brush fire. I've got my aunt who lives near Balboa, and so her entire lot was like filled with 5-foot tall grasses. And it was like dangerous, and so the city required her to remove that and cut it down. It sucked, but these things are necessary to make the city last long term and to prevent like momentary unexpected costs like flooding or fire. These things, you don't plan on it, and then all of a sudden, how much did LA have to pay for their fire damage? Like $1 trillion or something. You know, avoiding cost is way cheaper than paying for the consequences.
What is your stance on short-term vacation rentals, which you already said, but I'll let you touch on it more, and the vacancy tax?
So the vacancy tax, I kind of, this is like some like 4D chess. I would pass the vacancy tax and I wouldn't even try and enforce it, because I support it, except it's probably not enforceable, and it's probably just going to cost the city money, and it's just going to waste everyone's time. But you add a little bit of pressure where someone's like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, and I've got this vacation rental, or it's empty, maybe I'll sell it. That'd probably help. But probably I kind of don't support it, because I don't believe it's very enforceable. I've seen similar laws be challenged and not survive the challenge. If I'm not a lawyer, if they've figured it out perfectly, I don't think it's the worst thing ever, but it would first off, require that there's nothing on a primary residence. If you're old and you like are living on a, I don't know, a cruise ship or something, or you're away for a lot of the year and that's your primary residence still, I would hate for you to deal with a charge. But for people that are, I know there's a lot of people who have a lot of property and they kind of don't even, like, they've got so much they can't even keep track of it all, and so things get forgotten. I wouldn't mind a little pressure on them to be like, okay, let's sell this, or let's get this, someone moved in here. But that's kind of more of a philosophy thing than actually talking about the policy. I really do. I have not seen evidence that it's very enforceable. Short-term rentals, though bans have been enforceable, it's a city ordinance. Enforceability is difficult because you can just post something online, like they'll keep popping up. But it's about not hurting, but I have a friend who got a degree in hotel management, and instead of working for a hotel, he's working for an Airbnb owner. And he was giving her a tour of her residences in OB. She didn't even know what houses she owned. She didn't know what her houses were. He had to show her. So like, that's not my, I don't want that as my neighbor. I want someone invested in the community. And that's why I think that the short-term rental ban is both like left and right. Like it reduces pressure on housing costs a little bit, but it also keeps people in single family homes invested in the community. Make sure it's not a hotel room sprung up next to your house. We live 2 blocks away from a short-term rental where someone was murdered.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a fight or something, and then some guy tried to break him up and put him in a headlock, and then he ended up passing away from the headlock.
Oh my God.
2 blocks away,
That's
like,
crazy.
I don't want people drinking and partying. Okay, if there's drinking and partying happening next door, I want it to be like the high schooler whose parents left.
Or out of town, yeah. That's all I have. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, if anyone's made it this long, thank you for listening to all my rants. I'm no formal politician. I love San Diego. I love Point Loma especially, and OB. And if you're interested in voting for me, in mail-in ballots go up March 10th, I think, and then from June 2nd will be election day. I would really appreciate your vote. And if not me, try and vote for one of these, not super funded people. I like Paul Supa. I like Mandy Havlick. If you're not political, I kind of like you a little bit more.